Thank you. Good morning, everybody. And happy Christmas as it's approaching. There's one thing I think I feel pretty confident about. By the time I finish today, you won't be referring to me as Santa Claus. I got some news from the federal budget for you all. So, I'll go through them one by one. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just take a minute to introduce my role to those of you that aren't familiar with what I do at Centrelink. My role's called the Financial Information Service. So the financial part implies that I do something financially, and that is I've got a diploma in financial planning, and the main part of this role in Centrelink is helping people understand how to better manage their retirement wealth. It's also meant to be helping people accumulate wealth during their working life, but that's a very hard audience to get hold of. People don't tend to be too concerned with that. They've got their super, they think, and that's all there is to it. But so if you're considering your options with your super, considering selling an investment property, etc., or downsizing your house, I can help you understand your financial options and the decisions you're facing. The second part of my workload would be, since I worked at Centrelink for 25 years, I know a thing or two about Centrelink entitlements. So that would be helping you understand the complexities with Social Security law and whether you can qualify for a payment, or whether we could look at a strategy where your payment could be increased if you do things a bit differently. There are still some options around out there. Over the years, assets exemptions on things have been removed, but there are still some strategies that some customers can adopt to achieve a higher Centrelink payment, and I can help you out with that. And the third main part of my workload would be seeing family about a family member who's gone into aged care. So it's usually the spouse or children come in. Aged care is very complicated. It's not Centrelink business. We perform a service for the relevant government department by assessing people's income and assets. But we can tie it all together for you, the issues with the pension, the vacated house and the aged care fees. In a one-stop shop, I can tie all those things together in an information package for you. So that's probably 99% of my traffic through the narrow Centrelink would be covering one of those three issues for you. I don't assess people's pensions and do updates and things like that. Sometimes people still ring me up and they say, look, I've just sold my car, can you make a note of that? Well, no, I can't do any updates on your pension, but I can give you information and we can talk about these things, especially if you're considering options. It's much better to find out about your options before you take any action than afterwards. Okay, now to the federal budget. Last year's budget, we all know there was lots of talk in last year's budget, but it never really got off the ground, did it? There wasn't many changes that were actually legislated. And that includes changing the pension age to 70. We were just talking about that earlier before you reconvened here during the tea break. There's been no talk about the pension age being 70. It was in the budget for 2014, that measure, but haven't heard anything since. This year's budget, however, it was bang, bang, from the budget into both houses of Parliament, royal assent, bingo, it happened straight away. So the changes I'm mentioning today are already well and truly legislated. They're real, they're happening. The first change is the change to how we assess defined benefit income streams. Now, if you've got it defined, you can look around the room and you see the people with the broadest smiles, they're the people with a defined benefit income stream, because they're a guaranteed, usually government pension, if you've been a state or a Commonwealth government employee. Some corporations have them. It's a guaranteed indexed pension for life. I'm going to get one myself one day, and I'm looking forward to that. So, how does Centrelink assess these? Well, in the old days, you remember the tax deduction was the UPP, the undeducted purchase price. And that used to come off your income when they assessed it as a taxable income, and Centrelink used to allow that off too. But it was only a token amount, $15 a week or something like that. It didn't make a huge difference. Since 2007, the exempt portion of your defined benefit income stream is the tax-free component. Now, for most Commonwealth supers, the tax-free component is zero. We just assess the lot. But for a lot of state government recipients, the state super scheme, I've seen tax-free components anywhere between 0 and 63%. So that'd be pretty handy if the Centrelink income test exempted 63% of your income. And that's actually what's going on. So it's not all cases like that, but there's a lot around that 40% mark or so, where the age pension income test exempts around 40% of someone's income from state super. So this started in 2007, and eventually, it took a while, but government tweaked. They don't want the income test to work like that. They don't want to put an income test in front of you and then exempt half of your income. So they're changing it. So there'll be plenty of people out there who get an age pension now who will not be getting an age pension from the 1st of January 2016 because the tax-free component will be capped. The maximum amount we'll deduct or exempt under the income test is 10% of the gross. So for some, that makes a very big change. For most com supers, they're coming in asking us about this change. Well, there's no change for them. 0 would still say 0. We're just going to keep assessing the full amount. But for most state super recipients, there will be an adjustment because we might be exempting 30%, 40%, 60%. Well, we're going to cap that we're only going to exempt 10% of that income. Now, one of the commentators out there, there's articles written all the time, is they refer to the retired school principal couple with an income of $120,000 a year and still getting some age pension. Well, that's right. There were people in that position. Because if you're exempting half of it, the income test for the pension, it doesn't eliminate the pension until your combined income for a couple exceeds around $75,000 a year. So this couple, if they had $120,000 and we're exempting half of it, well, yes, they're going to get a small age pension. So governments realise they don't want the income test to work that way. I think if you surveyed taxpayers who are funding the age pension, if they said, do you want to fund an age pension to a couple with an income of $120,000? I don't think many taxpayers would want to do that either. So they're capping this tax-free component at 10%. So there'll be many people assessed with more income, and that means your age pension will reduce. But in some cases, it'll mean the age pension cancels completely. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about? Yep. Any questions on that one? No one's throwing anything at me either. That's good. Yes.
1st of January next year.
Yes, 2016. No, 2016. Yes. People have been notified. They've been getting letters. The super funds have been sending out letters too, and Centrelink sent out our letters. Both letters went out around late October, and it generated a bit of traffic. What I've found is the people that are coming in to see me had no idea that this was going on, and most of the people that have come and seen me, they've got a Commonwealth super with no tax-free component, so they haven't been getting any advantage. So what's this about? The people that have been getting a great advantage, they tend to have known what's going on. They've known they've had an income much higher than we're assessing, and they've just, oh, well, okay, the game's up now. I'm going to have more income assessed. The people that are impacted tended to know all about this because they've known about the advantage under the income test that's been on offer since 2007. So they've been pretty well across this. There's one more thing I was going to say about that, but geez, with my Alzheimer's, I've just forgotten. Oh, it's terrible.
You haven't got a letter to write.
Say again?
You haven't got a letter to write.
Well, if you haven't got a letter, you haven't got a defined benefit income stream and be a Centrelink customer. We send out to our customers. Now, government made a very generous concession when they brought in this policy. They said that this change will not impact on military supers. Well, that was very generous because military supers are very similar to the Com Super scheme, and their tax-free component was already zero. So good on them for exempting military from this policy. Okay, so that's one change for the 1st of January 2017. No, 16. Because I'm going to talk about a change for the 1st of January 2017 now. So this is another year away yet, but that's the change to the assets test. Now, once again, this is going to mean there'll be some people who get a reduced, their pension will be reduced further, and some people will lose their pension altogether. Back around 2009, I think it was, the assets test changed overnight. It got much easier. The cut-off point for a homeowner couple, we exempt your home. If your other assets exceeded around $535,000, no age pension. That was when the pension got to zero. Overnight, they changed that limit to about $836,000. And that was a wonderful policy for people more people came into the pension system. It was very beneficial. A lot of people smiling about that one. What they're doing now in 2017, they're simply returning the assets test to where it was. Because that 836,000 cut-off limit from around 2009, that's indexed up over the years. Well, it's indexed up to a cut-off level at the moment for a homeowner couple of 1.163 million. So if you've got assets at 1.153 million, you're going to get some age pension and the pension concessions. Well, that won't be the case from the 1st of January 2017 because they're moving the assets test back to where it always was. So the new cut-off will be around the $820,000 mark. We say around because the figure's going to be indexed a few times before 2017. But that's the approximate figure, around 820,000. And that's about where the cut-off of 535 would have indexed up to if they'd never changed the assets test. So it's not good news, but it's simply restoring the assets test to where it always was. So on the one hand, if you're a glass half full person, you'll say, well, if you're going to lose the pension in 2017, at least this policy change allowed you to get the pension for a period of time that you never would have got. And there's something else I was going to say on that too. I'll catch up with that point in a minute. So, so that happens then. What was that point I was going to make? I've forgotten that. I'll get back to it. Now, what government has said is, not for the first change in 2016, but if you're impacted by this change and you lose the age pension in 2017, you will get a Commonwealth Seniors Health Card for life. Because you're going to lose the pension concessions. If you lose the pension, you lose the pension concessions. But they'll give you the Seniors Health Card for life if you lose it because of that change. The thing I was going to say was, if you're just over the new cut-off, if your assets are around 830, 840, 850, your rate of pension will be zero. But that pensioner couple will be losing about $10,000 a year of age pension. So it's significant for some. But if you're just at the 1.1 million stage, the pension you're losing is very small. The thing that you'll grieve is losing the pension concessions. Right. Now the Seniors Health Card, of course, that only covers the concession at the chemist. So you'll lose rates, rego, licence, you'll lose those concessions. A lot of you will have a state government seniors card, that harder white and blue plastic card. Well, that gets you transport concessions, and the seniors health card will get you the chemist concession. But the pension card gets you ambulance cover, whereas the seniors health card does not. And you'll lose those other concessions, as we said. A lot of those concessions are state-based, and it's at the discretion of the states. Now, I've heard a rumour that the ACT is no longer going to provide pension concessions to their residents, which means rates and rego and licence. One of my colleagues from the ACT told me that. So whether that's going to be the start of something across the country, I don't know. I know they were not universal. Not all states did offer these concessions. And I remember, I think it might have been Baird, he came out about 18 months ago or 2 years ago, he said, New South Wales will keep supporting the pension concessions for now. So who knows what's in that space, but that's definitely a state government decision because they're state-based utilities. So any questions on the assets test changes? Yes?
The assets test is just the house, or is it your other assets?
The home you live in is an exempt asset, so it doesn't count towards these totals at all. But if you own other property, of course, that counts, but the house does not. So the old cut-off, or the current cut-off, 1.163, becomes around 820 for a single person. Current cut-off around 779,000, 791,000. They keep changing it. 791,000. That'll be around 545 for a single person. That's the level where the assets will eliminate your pension completely. Yes.
If your house is not split with assets, what other things other than, say, an invested property would be assessed?
Anything of value. A bank account, it's an asset. Shares, term deposits, cars. I've had one chap who was very pumped up. I bet he's saying, a person should be able to have a car. I said, well, you can have a car because the first 291,000 of your assets doesn't affect the pension at all. So 3 cars if you want to, because you do have that scope to hold assets with no impact. Once you go over the threshold, the assets start to take away your pension. Super is an exempt asset only until you turn pension age. Now, once you turn pension age, your super counts as an asset. It can be an asset before your pension age if it's rolled into an income stream. An income stream, the allocated pension, account-based pension, these things are assessable assets no matter what your age. But if it's in the standard accumulation account, it's an exempt asset whilst you're under pension age. So those people that are on a payment from us, they're not pension age, they might be on New Start allowance or disability support pension. They get a transfer form, and the main reason they get the transfer form is to find out about their super, because until now, we probably haven't even asked about it, because it's an exempt asset. So that's the time when super is first assessed. So that's one strategy I talk to my customers about. You very rarely find a couple where both spouses turn pension age at the same time. So one person's pension age, combined assets affect their rate of pension, but if that couple loads wealth into the super fund for the younger spouse, well, the younger spouse's super is an exempt asset. So it's very easy to lower your assets when one spouse is below pension age. Of course, it's a financial decision. You've got to do your own research and get advice, etc. Is it a sound financial decision? But if your spouse is, say, 60 and retired, well, they can access their super. As soon as they're over 55 and retired, they can get their super. So putting it in isn't a big risk. It's still an investment. You need to take advice. Is it the right investment decision for you? But you can get up to $540,000 into super in one go. That can make a huge difference to the couple's assets that are assessed. The annual cap is $180,000. But if you're under 65, you can use 3 years of the cap in one go. It means you can't get any more in for 3 years, but you can get $540,000 into super today. So that definitely lowers the combined assets for the person who is pension age, and it's worthy of consideration. I've seen some couples that by the time they do this, they lower assets for the pensioner. It allows us to then pay New Start allowance to the spouse, and over a few years, it's tens of thousands, $60,000 of extra entitlement from Centrelink because they've rearranged their circumstances that way. So, of course, if you're on New Start allowance, you've got to be doing something to get that payment. You know, if you're over 55, you can be doing volunteer work or you can be job seeking. But plenty of couples look at an entitlement for both spouses. Just because one person's reached pension age doesn't mean we only talk to one person. We look to both members of the couple to see if both can be paid. Now, the thing about the New Start assets test is, once you go over 286,000, it's 291 for the pension. But once you go over 286,000, New Start doesn't start to step down. It just chops off instantly. It's black and white, the assets test for New Start allowance. But if you load assets into the super fund for the younger spouse, you might get your assets below 286,000, which means the pension has gone from a reduced rate to maximum rate, and the spouse has gone from a 0 rate to a rate of New Start allowance. It's possible. And it can make a big difference to what we pay until that younger spouse reaches pension age, because their super becomes accessible at that time. So just be aware there are options, and I can help you understand those options. I can also talk to you about the decision about putting money into super. I love showing people how super funds rate, how they perform, talk about fees you could be paying. You know, I can help demystify the decision about putting money into super. I think it's important with our superannuation we get some independent information, because 99% of the people I meet are in a super fund they've been put in. Their employer or their advisor has put them there. They've never made any decisions themselves about it. So as an educator, I like to show people a little bit about how they can take some control themselves and understand their super a bit better. Yes?
Steve, given the greatest part is retired people, what options do we have to make changes to super?
Oh, anybody can change their super at any time. For instance, you might be in super fund XYZ, which is a fantastic super fund, but you're a bit nervous about how the money's exposed to the share markets. You can change around the internals so it's more defensive. You might be in fund XYZ, but you really prefer fund A, B, C. So you can roll at any time your super into a new product. You can roll your income stream back into super, your super into income stream. You can take it all out and put it in the bank. There's lots of options you have. Just because you've got a super fund doesn't mean it's been cemented in there. Nothing's set in stone with your super. There are times when you can't get it out. There's only 4 ways you can get your super out. Not very popular, the first one. Super comes out when you're dead. It can come out when you're 65, working or not, you can get your super. When you're over 60 and leave a job, your retirement is presumed, so you can get your super. Or if you're over 55 and retired, you can get your super. Now, when you can get your super, that means it can roll into an income stream, or you can get it out of there and put it in some other investment you prefer. You can bury it in the back garden if you want to. So we get access to our super. Now, when we take an income stream, just because we've got an income stream doesn't mean we've made a lifetime decision. We could take our capital out of there if we don't like it there. We could roll it back into super. We might say, well, I've got a younger spouse here. If I put it in their super fund, it's an exempt asset. So you might take it out of your income stream, withdraw it, and contribute it to your younger spouse's super fund. All options are on the table. So it's important to be aware of your options. The biggest thing I find is that people come into me, they're less aware about how their income stream or their super fund rates as a product, and they're less aware as to how it performs as an investment. But they're partially aware of the fees they're paying, and that would motivate someone to have a chat to me about the fees you're paying. But nothing's set in stone with your super. Right, so any other questions on that asset test change?
Just one more.
Yes?
Money that's in super, is that treated exactly the same as money in the bank or in shares?
It is. Once we count your super, because your pension age. For us, we treat it the same. It could be a bank account, it could be a parcel of shares. The account balance is an asset, and we assume the asset earns you the deeming rates of interest. So there's no difference, super to the bank. Buried in the back garden, we still apply the same rules. It's still an asset that we assume is earning you interest. Now, since January 2015, your income stream is treated the same way too. There's an income test advantage for income streams which wasn't removed from people already under those rules. But for new income streams from the 1st of January onwards, or for people starting age pension from the 1st of January onwards, their income stream is now just deemed as well. Just like a bank account, just like the super fund. So there'll be some people with the income stream that's under the old rules, they don't want to upset that. They don't want to move anything, because if they get a new income stream, it's got a new purchase date, which means it's going to be deemed. So there'll be some people who want to stick with their old product come hell or high water for that advantage. At the moment, interest rates are very low. Very few people are benefiting from that at the moment, but there are some. Now, the rule that's changing in January 2016, it's the first time, or very rarely, do you see a rule that's changing that doesn't protect the people that are already affected. So, come January 2016, that tax-free component for state super, that's changing for everybody. Not just people that start the pension after 2016. No, even people already on the pension. This is going to affect everybody in one go. Yes?
Steve, when you talk about fees and super funds,
yes,
in your view, is there a point at which they should be regarded as too high?
Well, yes, there is. It depends on a couple of factors. Firstly, your industry super fund's not offering advice on a day-to-day basis. They're not charging you for advice, so their fees are generally around 0.7%. But some of the big retail funds, they charge you for advice, and that's whether you use it or not. And you've been around 2.2 to 2.3%. Now, the retail funds have been bringing their fees down, but some of the statements are very hard to read because ASIC's told them that they must give you a statement that's quite unambiguous, total fees. But I'm still not sure, when I see total fees, if it's come from the provider like MLC or Asgard or Colonial, is it just the total fees that the fund manager's charging, and then you're paying the advisor on top of that? So generally, if you're paying for advice, that's very good if you value the advice you're getting. If you're paying for advice and you never see your advisor, well, that's the time to reassess, and you can opt out of your advice fee. You can say, I don't want to pay the advice fee anymore. That can be a saving straight away. But if you are paying the advice fee, then when you can ring him up, I want to come and see you. I'm a bit worried about the markets. You're paying him, he's on the payroll, you've got access to your advisor, you book an appointment. So the higher fee, because you're paying for advice, doesn't mean it's bad value. But it is bad value if you're paying for advice that you don't use. So you should all ask your advisor, what are the total fees I'm paying, including fund manager and advice fees. And if it's getting over about 1.5% for both, then it's getting a little high. Super is a very flexible arrangement because you can, let's say a typical industry super fund will give you about 13 options. Inside your super fund, you can say, look, I just have all my money just invested in cash, just invested in bonds, just invested in shares. Or I might be a diversified fund. I might be a balanced fund, which is about 3/4 in shares and the rest in cash. It's inflexible to the point that if you're over 65 and not working, you cannot get money into super. But if you're over 65 and you've got super and you're worried about the markets, you can ring the fund or ring your advisor and say, look, back off my exposure to the markets right now. I'm a bit worried about things. You know, I've got 60% in Australian shares. Let's change that. Let's move it across to bonds or to cash inside the super fund. You get the flexibility to change your exposure in the fund. And then if you feel better about the markets, you could get, re-expose yourself to the markets. Be very cautious about changing it around. People that jump and change often make it worse, not better. So, make sure you get good advice about that. But yes, if you opt out of super and you're over 65, you can't get it back in. If you've got an entitlement to a foreign pension, you have to claim it if you want the age pension from Australia. But one of the rules is you must seek that income. What that does is it does two things. It helps the taxpayer here because we might be paying you a bit less because you've got income. But remembering that our income test only cuts in at 50 cents off the pension for every dollar of income, so the pensioner's better off getting an income from overseas and the taxpayer's better off by getting an income overseas. But you must claim it. Now, we keep track of the exchange rate. So if you tell us, I get £25 a week, we'll keep track of what £25 a week is worth in Australian dollars. About every month, we change the exchange rate. So you tell us once, and that's it. A lot of overseas pensions index, but the British one doesn't index it does index if you're living in about 53 countries around the world, but they don't index it if you live in Australia. That's very nice, isn't it?
I have an English pension, okay. I elected to have it, and my wife, to be paid to us every 13 weeks as opposed to every fortnight. When the rate of exchange is estimated on that, does it take place at the end of that 13-week period on that day, to the 13-week period on that day, or does it go every fortnight? Some other friends of mine in the Gold Coast, they get theirs through every 2 weeks.
Yeah, we basically annualise, but then we'll annualise something. We bring it down to a fortnightly figure, but whether you get it every month or every 13 weeks, you're getting so much per annum. So that's the figure for us. It's the same income for us. So every month we'll track the exchange rate. So what you're doing makes no difference to your age pension because it's simply annualised and then broken down to a fortnightly figure.
Right, thank you.
Now there's one more change coming in 2016, and that's to do with aged care. Now, just briefly, won't get too complicated in this, but ask me questions if you've got any. Basically, there's a concession rule out there that allows people to rent their vacated home to help with their aged care costs. Now, there's the rental income can be exempt income if there's a couple of conditions in place. Now, we all know in aged care we can be asked to pay a lump sum. It used to be called the accommodation bond. Now it's called the refundable accommodation deposit, a RAD. Now, you can decide to pay some of that RAD or all of that RAD as an interest style payment instead of paying the lump sum. Now, if the RAD's 300,000, whether you've paid 295 or 5 or nothing, you're still paying interest on some of that amount. If you're paying the interest on an unpaid portion of the RAD and you're renting your home, well then the rental income is exempt income for the pension and it's exempt income for the aged care fees. So that's a real help to some people. It makes aged care affordable because it has got more expensive when the rules changed in 2014. Now, what's changing in January is that they'll no longer exempt this rental income when they work out your aged care fees. The Centrelink will continue to exempt the income when we work out your pension. But they're going to drop the concession on the aged care fees. Now that'll only apply to people that have entered care from January onwards. So people who are in care now and they're getting their rental income exempt now, they'll keep that exemption. But if you enter care next year, that's a little bit of a concession that's going to be lost. So there are plenty of people out there that do pay some of their lump sum via an interest-style payment. Not many. It's my experience, most people that are in aged care, either their spouse is still in the home, so that's fine, or they've sold their home. That's the option most people take up. They don't want the hassle of, family trying to rent a house, the capital's tied up. If they haven't, it's generally the only way a pensioner has of paying the lump sum anyway. And if you don't pay the lump sum, the interest cost can be prohibitive. It's already expensive, aged care, and then you've got another 15, 20 grand a year of interest-style payments. So most people take the option of selling their home if they need a lump sum for aged care. But if you keep it and rent it, well then there is that concession that the rental income can be exempt for the pension and for the aged care fees. The other benefit is the vacated home is an exempt asset for as long as these conditions are in place. The normal rule is when you enter aged care, the house is exempt asset for the pension for the first 2 years only. But if you're paying an interest-style payment and you're renting your home, if you've got those two conditions in place, the home's an exempt asset as long as those conditions are in place. It could be for your entire stay in aged care. The prices for home-based care did go up, but they'd much rather you get care in the home or with family than in an aged care facility. But we all know that there comes a point, no matter how determined you may be, there comes a time when the care needs are such that you just can't cope with offering care in the home. About half the population or a bit less actually end up in an aged care facility. But it does happen that if the care needs get that great, often the decision's taken out of people's hands sometimes. My mother was determined not to go into aged care ever. When they put her into care, she wiped my father. He sat at her bedside every day and she just ignored him because he'd done this to her. Brings her back home again, takes her out of aged care. There was a fall and neither of them could get up. So where did she wind up again? She wound up in aged care again. There comes a point, no matter how determined you are, the care needs might be that you just have to go into care. Not everybody, about half the population might end up in aged care, but it is expensive. Just a little bit on the aged care rules that changed in July 2014. It used to be, they wanted the old accommodation bond. Let's say the bond was $300,000. And let's say you had assets of $250,000, and they used to have to leave you with about $43,000. It's about $48,000 now. Let's just say it's $50,000 in round numbers. They had to leave you with. So they wanted $300. You had $250. They could take $200 off you. So they say, all right, give us the $200,000. In you come, no problems. That was the end of that. They would skim a bit off the bond. Over 5 years, the maximum skim was about $20,000 and it was refundable. Under the new rules, same scenario, the bond's the RAD's $300,000, you've got $250,000. They don't have to leave you with the $48,000 or $50,000 anymore. They have to leave that with you when they take the first payment from you. But that doesn't stop them taking more payments later, more lump sum payments later. But let's say they take $200,000. I say, in you come, really, give us $200,000, in you come. But then you're short, aren't you? You're short by $100,000. So now you charge interest on the $100,000. Now, let's say you can't pay the interest, which would normally be the case. Otherwise, you might have capacity to pay more of the RAD. So you say, all right, take the interest off my lump sum. So instead of it being 100% refundable, it's now being eroded. Now, let's say in broad terms the interest was, it wouldn't be, but if I use different numbers, let's say the interest is 10 grand a year, it's actually 6.14%. So on 100,000, that's obviously $6,140. But let's say for round terms I use different maths and the interest was $10,000. So after a year, you're not short by 100, you're now short by 110. So then you pay interest on the 110, not the 100. Or in the case of what I said, you're short by 106. You're short by 106, you pay interest on 106. After another year, you're short by 113. You pay interest on 113, etc. So that's one of the features of the new rules. The lump sum can be charged, but the lump sum charged is no longer related to your asset base. It's related to the lump sum the facility wants to get. So if you can't pay, if you've got assets over 157,000, you can be charged a lump sum, but then that lump sum doesn't depend on what assets you've got. It's the lump sum the facility wants. So there are plenty of people in aged care now who are actually spending capital just to live in aged care. It was very rare under the old rules, but I see from time to time there's plenty of customers now in aged care that are spending down capital just to pay their costs. Any questions on aged care? Yes.
What if you haven't got the capital?
Well, there will always be people who don't have any means of support above the pension, and they're going to get aged care. They will. They'll be subsidised to a greater extent. But let's say the line in the sand, you can't be charged a lump. Can't be charged a lump sum if your assets are below about 157,000. But instead of the refundable accommodation deposit, or the interest style payment is the daily accommodation payment, the DAP, they can charge you an accommodation contribution, which means you're contributing towards the accommodation cost, but you're not in the area where you could be charged a lump sum. So I've seen someone with assets around 150,000, not the 157, so they're in the area where they can't be charged a lump sum, but the daily accommodation contribution is significant. It's going to impact on that person's assets. Their assets will be depleting as they meet this extra cost in aged care. And the other change is, I had a bloke at golf, a good mate of mine for years at golf, well into his 80s, but a remarkable fellow. His wife went into care, and he was living in the family home. So, of course, the family home is an exempt asset for the aged care system. Of course, he's living there. He was living with the weight of pressure that he thought if his wife died before him, the aged care facility was going to come and take the house to pay this bond that he didn't pay when she first entered care. He didn't understand the rules. He walked around the golf course for 4.5 hours every Saturday right beside me, and he never asked me this question. For years, he thought that he was going to lose his home if she died before him. Well, of course, no, that won't happen. Under the old rules, once the decision was made at entry, no lump sum, that was it. That decision was never revisited. Under the new rules, it may be no lump sum, but then if the spouse vacates the house as well, the exemption on the house is over. So the person that's been in care, their fees might adjust when the house becomes available later, and they might be charged the accommodation contribution, not the lump sum RAD, but they could be charged an accommodation contribution. So it's a very different world with aged care. The point to take away from this today is you're not going to walk out of here an expert on the aged care rules, but walk out of here with the knowledge that you should come and talk to me. If a family member's going into aged care, come and have a chat about it so I can help you better understand what's in front of you. And myagedcare.gov.au is a very good website. At least not to give you clarity really about all this, there is a lot of information on there, but you can find facilities on there, and one of the new features with the new rules is the facilities have to advertise the price they want, the lump sum they want. So you could look up any facility A, B, C in town here. You can look them up. You can get a list of all the facilities in town. So you click on the one you're interested in, and it might have 4 styles of accommodation there. It might have shared room, shared bathroom, 200,000. Shared room, private bathroom, 250. Single room, shared bathroom, 280. Single room, private bathroom, 320. They'll tell you the styles of accommodation that they offer and the lump sums they want. So you can do that research yourself. Many people out there over the years, it's amazing how many people I meet over the years who believe having no money is giving away money is the pathway to wealth. Because they think, well, if I don't leave my spouse money in my will, if I leave it to the kids instead of my spouse, I'll leave the spouse a lot better off. Well, that's not the case, clearly. But one thing that might motivate you sitting here thinking is, well, I'm not going to leave the house to my wife, or I'm not going to leave my husband all my investments, because then he'll have money, and then he'll have money that they're going to take when he goes into care. Well, remember that the lump sum RAD, the refundable accommodation deposit, is refundable. The capital's not surrendered. But if you don't have the capacity to pay that lump sum, you'll still get aged care, of course. But you won't get the room on the top floor with a wide balcony looking over the countryside, all to yourself. You'll get that room downstairs with 3 other people in it. So the standard of accommodation you get could be reflective of your capacity to pay. So when you're making your wills and your estate planning and things, don't think you're going to leave your spouse better off by not leaving them with wealth. It's always better to pay that lump sum. It gives you more choice. If you can pay the lump sum, you get more choice. You're not going to get the first facility turn you away and then the second facility give you a shared room. You've got more options if you can pay that lump sum. So if you've got options, don't think you're going to leave your spouse better off by not giving them wealth in your estate. And estate planning is a whole other topic as well. Come and talk to me about that one too. All right, how are we going? Yes.
There's an increasing propensity for people with wealth or acquired wealth, when they reach retirement age or before, to plough that money into a humongous dwelling, or a moderate style dwelling, in order to get the pension. Mm-hmm. Now, the government is going to have a great deal of difficulty in attempting to assess a level above which the home ownership will be an asset. So, what do you think is the likelihood of the introduction of death duties?
Well, I don't know about death duties, but as far as the pension's concerned, no one in government is talking about assessing part of the home as an assessable asset. There's some commentary about it, but there was commentary about that 5 years ago too. But I just think about one thing. Imagine if the government was going to assess part of your home as an asset. Can you imagine the headlines the next day? I don't think any government would move to assess part of the home as an asset. There could be an argument for it. Let's say, look at Sydney, the median house price is nearly $1 million. So where do they set the bar? I mean, they could set it at some very high figure, so as not to look too unpalatable, like $5 million or something. But then again, how many people with $5 million homes are going to be on the pension anyway? So they could bring in this policy that just causes all this unrest that doesn't save the taxpayer any money, or much money. They did the complete opposite back in 2008. They brought in a policy that instead of just exempting the house plus 5 acres, they brought in a policy that could exempt the house on any size block, like a farm. They brought that in 2008. There's a lot of restrictions on that. It's very clear who can get this benefit. You can't just buy a farm 5 minutes before you claim age pension, so all your wealth gets exempted. No, you've got to have lived there for 20 years. It's got to have been your lifestyle, right? And many farms in this area are multiple titles. Oh, I bought the block across the road, you know, blah, blah, blah. But it's only the block that the house sits on that's an exempt asset, but it can be any size. Now, I can just imagine in the years leading up to this, people in this area or across the country, they go into their local member, well, my brother-in-law's got a $3 million house in Bondi and he gets an age pension. I've got a $1 million farm and I can't get an age pension. So that's obviously been behind the change. But they did legislate to actually exempt more home assets rather than less. But I don't think we'll see it in Australia where part of the home that's used domestically, if you use part of your home for commercial reasons, that part of the home is counted as an asset right now. It's only the home that, to the extent that it's used domestically, is an exempt asset. So no, I don't think there'll be that change. But they don't often consult with me about future changes, so I won't get a chance to give input. Now, your state super, your income from the state government, the defined benefit one, that's non-taxable income and it doesn't affect. Your com super is a taxable income and it does affect. So there you go, I worked that one out. But your income stream, your account-based pension, is deemed to earn a rate of income, and that's added to your taxable income when we apply the income test for this Commonwealth Seniors Health Card. It's about $52,000 cut off for the single person and around $82,500 cut off for the married person. That's combined. Combined adjusted taxable income.
Would you be better off without super then?
No. Super's a tax-free environment. Most retirees I meet would not pay income tax anyway. They get an additional tax-free threshold. My tax-free threshold is $18,200. If I was a married retiree, I get an effective tax-free threshold of nearly $29,000. So if we were both age pensioners, we each get $29,000 tax-free threshold because of the senior Australian tax offset. So, and if one of us doesn't use our threshold, we can share it with the other spouse. But those with a bit of investment wealth, they benefit under the tax system because their allocated pension or their account-based pension is a completely tax-free environment. The earnings of the fund are not taxed, so the fund, when it gets you investment earnings, it doesn't pay tax because your super fund does. And then when it pays you this income stream, it's not taxable income to you. So super's a very good retirement product. Come and see me if you're looking at investment options, if you know someone going into aged care, if you're wondering whether you should get an entitlement to a pension or not, come and see me. My direct number, who wants my direct phone number? Don't ring me up to say, how do I tell Centrelink that I've changed this, I've changed that? Don't ring me up to ask me those questions because I can't help you with that. You just got to go through the normal channels. But if you want to talk to me about the sort of things I've been mentioning to you, ring me direct. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you, Steve, for a most enlightening talk, and I'm sure you've provided a lot of information for us. And I'd like to present you with a little. It's a pen.
Thank you.
And it's been made by one of our members, Gordon Elford. Personally made.
Really?
It's not purchased from the shop. This is top stuff.
Thank you.
So, thank you for the talk. It was terrific.
Thank you.